What's up, guys? This is Tyler, and I just purchased a subscription to the Draft Network's premium subscription, which means I will be able to either trade up or trade back in this draft scenario, which is great. One of the things you guys have brought up many times is trading up for Panay Sewell. And I think, depending on how this board goes in May or April, May, I think that's kind of a possibility. I just don't think it's as much of a possibility as the simulation lets it be. But hey, I have the subscription and I have the simulation, so I'm going to try it. If he makes it past the Bengals, I will try to trade up for Penei Sewell. If not, then I'm going to trade back. So I'll go 5 rounds. I'm picking slow to make sure I get the guy that I want and to make sure that I don't miss anything. So here we go. So we're hoping he makes it past the Bengals at 5. It is slow, but it'll go. Okay, so they did take him at 5. So I'm going to try to trade back now because I think it is very possible the Chargers can get a tackle or guard that they love anywhere between 20 and 25. Whoa, and they gave me a trade offer of all things. So look at that. The Bears want to move up. I get an extra third and I go back to 20. I think that's a great scenario. I'm curious who they want. Looks like there's a couple of offers. I can go back to 23, get a 2022 third. That's fun. That doesn't help me very much though in this simulation. And Washington wants me to give me a 4th and a 5th. I'm going to go and get that extra third. Who'd they take? Is it a quarterback? Oh my gosh, another trade back. Do I trade back again and get another third? Oh, they want me to trade up. Nah, I'm good. So at this point, I'm sitting pretty looking at Slater or Darisaw here. I highly doubt this actually happens, but here we are. So now I'm guaranteed one of those two. The Bills want to trade with me. I'm just going to stop at this point because it's going to go nuts. Now, at this point, I am operating under the assumption that Dan Feeney is back. Of the 3 free agents, I do think he's back because it gives them guard or center flexibility. And I think that's key here. Plus, I'm not as high on this interior offensive line class. I think they can be better than Dan Feeney. I'm just not pushing all my chips in there. So right now, I'm going to take a tackle, and I do think, Slater's gone anyway. So here we go. I'm going to take Christian Darisaw here, who I think would be a fantastic get at number 20. So picking a guy that I would love at 13, now back at 20, I think is already a win in terms of value, in terms of need. So at this point, I'm feeling pretty good. If Elijah Vera Tucker falls a little, nope, there he goes. As soon as I say it. So at this point, I'm looking at either a pass rusher or I'm looking at one of the interior offensive linemen. And there are a couple of interior offensive linemen in this simulation coming up pretty quick. So I'm likely looking at either your Humphrey, Dickerson, or Smith a little bit later on. The Eagles want to trade. Oh God, that's just too much for my brain. Stop it. I'm just so popular. Make one trade and everyone wants to do deals with you. So here, see, this is why I would rather take a tackle early. I'm just not a huge fan of Leatherwood. Ray Dunes is great. I just think Darisaw is much better than him. And I think Slater or Cosme would be better. And so at this point, I'm going to address the interior of the offensive line. Because Creed Humphrey is taken, I am more than likely taking Landon Dickerson, kicking him in at center, and then moving Feeney to guard, which is why I like holding on to Feeney in the free agency period, because if there's a good guard here, you take him and you put Feeney at center. If there's a good center here, you put Feeney at guard. And so I think it's a win-win. I'm going to take Landon Dickerson here. Okay, the guy that is pretty much always on my radar come the 3rd round pick is Quincy Roche. I like him more than Rousseau. Rousseau just doesn't have enough pass rush moves for me. Not that Roche has a whole lot more, but I do think he has that bend that you really like to see from an edge rusher. So I doubt he goes based on the simulation much earlier than I'd like to pick, but maybe I will give up a pick just to ensure that I get him, because I think him in the third round would really complete a good 1-2-3 combo of needs for the Chargers. The only reason that I'm not looking for a corner right now is because I also think that Davis will be retained in the free agency period, and I do think Harris returns. The biggest coin toss for me is Hayward. I don't think he's expensive enough to be cut. I don't think he even played that bad, or at least bad enough to be cut. Not that he played great, but I just think, giving up on a guy who has shown so much after one poor year, in perhaps this, perhaps he just does better this next year because of the health of the players. Better edge rusher next to Bosa being healthy, Derwin James, and perhaps maybe they sign a guy like Johnson in free agency. I doubt it, because of all the other needs. But so I'm not really looking for corner right now. I'm also looking for that offensive line, edge rusher, and then at some point, just best player available, maybe some wide receivers. So let's resume. I do think it is pretty possible that Mike Williams is traded, particularly if the Ravens want him for Orlando Brown. Obviously, at this point, I'm not operating with the assumption that Brown is on the team with the Chargers. So I do think they'll retain Williams for one more year. I don't think they will extend him, and I don't think they should extend him. Oh, it's my pick. Okay, so at this point, I have my center, I have my tackle, and look at that. I'm glad I wasn't paying attention because I didn't have to trade up to get him. Pick 77, their 80th ranked prospect. I love Quincy Roche, so let's go with that. So at this point, I think the team is coming together really, really well. And I have another third in just a little bit. Now this one, I'm going to have to look at some of these guys because who is this, a trade offer? Should I trade back and get a sixth? Well, I'm only picking 5 rounds, so no. Thanks, Rams. So it's so sad that Deontay Brown, I feel like his stock is falling a lot further than 65 at this point. I just think his athleticism or his lack of athleticism is starting to show, and no one's really into that. Myers, I wasn't a huge fan of. And at this point, I don't think taking, 2 or 3 of the 4 picks being offensive linemen is that great of an idea. I have not watched Hunter Long. I hear he's a lot like Hunter Henry. I still think that's too early to take him. I really like Hudson, but again, this simulation, you can play him a little smarter. I pick again at 97. Again, this is the great thing about trading back is you get so many picks to take guys later on. I think I'm still going to go with Myers here. I do think Henry returns. If Henry did not return, I'd be taking a tight end here like Long. But because I think he returns, and because I think I can take better receivers later on, I'm going to go with Myers. Is that a lot to get 3 linemen in the first 4 picks? Yes. But is it necessary? Sure, I think so. And in a little bit, I'm going to take Hudson. Well, I hope I can take Hudson. We'll find out. So is it a little excessive to take Myers and have 3 rookies along the offensive line? Perhaps. I think the first 2 will start. I think Darrisaw and Dickerson will start with Feeney, Bulaga. The issue is that right guard position. I do think the Chargers will take a veteran guy at right guard in free agency. I just think asking so many rookies or asking like Feeney and Questenberry to start is a little bit rough. So I don't think that's going to happen. No, thank you, 49ers. Thanks for the pick, though. All right. Hopefully you guys can see that. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to take James Hudson. Hudson, I have no idea. I haven't obviously watched any James Hudson defensive film, but he was a former defensive tackle or end, I believe. His get off is insane. And I imagine that helped him so much as a defensive player. So I'm curious why he never made it as a defensive player. As a tackle, he's raw. But with my 3rd pick in the 3rd round, I can do that. And Hudson's a guy who you can put behind Bulaga for a year. And to be completely honest, you're probably going to see Hudson on the field eventually anyway. This is the kind of pick you want to make in the 3rd round. I know everybody's worried about the Trey Pipkins pick and how that didn't work out. But hey, you need to draft some linemen. So am I really about to take the fourth lineman in 5 picks? Yeah, I think so. And that does sound excessive, but that's not the fourth lineman in the first 5 rounds. That's the fourth lineman in the first 3 rounds. So these are some very good, high quality linemen, per their draft position. And so I'm going to go with that here. And later on, I'm going to start targeting some wide receivers because I do think they need that guy, that next guy. And if, as I'm assuming, Mike Williams is playing on the last year of his deal, I do think you need to have some guys that are ready to take that next step. Now, some of the guys I want later on, it's a bit of an overdraft, and that's fine. I don't think it's an overdraft in my opinion. If I'm looking at this guy in round 4, I'd be okay with that. Like, I don't think that's a huge overdraft, no matter about where he is on the draft network's board. A couple of guys that are interesting. Oh, Trask is still there. I'm not going to take him, but at some point I should take a corner. I think that's going to be the draft spots that I'm going to leave up to chance. And it's not going to be everyone's favorite thing. But the other issue is that I haven't watched enough corners to tell you. Like, I couldn't tell you where he plays, how he's played, where he's played, how he's played. So at this point, I'm going to operate with what I'm comfortable with. Now, Trey Sermon is very, very tempting here. I know everyone feels kind of burned by the 4th round pick of Joshua Kelly, but I think Sermon is pretty underrated at this point. His elusiveness in the open field is pretty spectacular. He does very subtle things to get that first down. It's not very complicated for him. He's not elusive like a Austin Eckler, obviously. So is it tempting to pick him here? Sure. Unfortunately, I don't think he does enough work on third down in the passing game. That's partially because of Ohio State. But I also didn't think his third down pass protection was all that great either. So I'm going to pass, but he's a guy to keep an eye on because I think he's better than what it seems so far. So I'm going to overdraft Des Fitzpatrick, and I do think he's going to go higher than pick 137. I think, although Tutu Atwell is kind of the flashier guy for Louisville, Fitzpatrick, what he did at the Senior Bowl, just YouTube Fitzpatrick one-on-one reps Senior Bowl. It's incredible. His movements, his route running is pretty spectacular. And I would say that, of the receivers that were there in those one-on-one reps, I thought he had probably the best set of reps. Just an outstanding player. He has those long strides. Steven compared him to Tyrell Williams. I believe against Boston College, he takes a 69-yard screen to the house simply off those long legs. And I really think that comparison is pretty good. So, getting a guy like Tyrell Williams, obviously they got him undrafted free agent back in the day, but we're taking Des Fitzpatrick here in the 4th round. I definitely have a 5th round pick coming up. I don't remember if I gathered another pick or not. I think I just grabbed that extra 3rd. So we just have 1 pick left, and we'll see what happens. But right now I am pretty happy. Look at that. We're 4 rounds in, and I have 6 players. And I think 3 of them are starters. Myers, it depends. Hudson will start soon, at least within a year, possibly during the season if Balaga goes down. I just don't think Pipkins is that guy for the team. And then Des Fitzpatrick, I think, is going to get a lot of work a lot sooner than we think. I think unlike KJ Hill is probably a better route runner, a pure route runner. But Fitzpatrick has that size and he has those strides that you really need from a receiver and really good hands. KJ Hill struggled with a couple of concentration drops last season. And I think that's why he got so much. Who is this from the Packers? No, thank you. So I think he got a lot of run early on, and then some of those struggles to catch the football and work on that rapport with Justin Herbert just never really panned out. So and he wasn't much of a punt returner. So I'm not really high on him. So at this point, like a guy like Fitzpatrick, I just think fits so much better. But not, I still think of good things for KJ Hill in the future. Just, I don't know about right now. If you can hear my dog snoring, it's because it's a loud dog that's snoring. Almost my pick. So one of the guys that stood out at the Senior Bowl was Shi Smith, at least in terms of the game itself. I was not a fan of his at all. I saw way too many drops from him in the few games that I watched. So I'm going to pass on him. What I'm going to do is take the next receiver. I know this is kind of overkill. But at this point, A, I'm operating with guys that I know, and B, this is the kind of the dart throw sort of round. And if you think it's crazy for the Chargers to take 2 receivers on day 3, they just did it last year. Now, what do they think of Joe Reed? I'm not quite sure, but I think Joe Reed still has a role in this offense, even if I pick another receiver. I think KJ Hill could, but we'll see. I'd love, remember, he is a 7th round draft pick. He's not guaranteed a spot on this roster. With Williams gone soon, and I think one of Guyton or Johnson are going to be gone eventually too. You have to start preparing for the future as well. So I'm going to go with a guy who had, I believe, 118 yards in his final 5 games of the season, including some really great games against 3 ranked teams to close out the year. So I'm going to go with my guy, Cornell Powell, a guy that I really like since the moment I watched him. I'm a guy who's tough and a guy who, great school, great program, who really turned it on. It took him a while, but once he turned it on, he was one of the best receivers in college football. And to get him here in the 5th round, I think is a great get. So I know it's another receiver. I know I didn't do a whole lot on defense, but I'm expecting, a couple of free agent moves and, just Staley in general being able to boost that defense. There's not as many holes in the defense as there are issues with the coaching and the scheme, I feel. There are holes, but I do think that Staley can maximize this defense. So while they do have a defensive coach, their whole goal and their whole philosophy was to surround Herbert with talent and make this the best offense they possibly could. And so I'm going to go with Cornell Powell here. Now, 7 picks, and I think we've addressed at least 3 starting-ish roles. I know they have Uchenna Nwosu, but I think the Chargers did their best when they had 3 pass rushers on the field, when they had Bosa, Ingram, and Nwosu on the field. And if they can get something like that out of Bosa, Nwosu, and Roche, I think you're doing pretty well for yourself. And, if Roche shows up really well and Nwosu just, kind of fades, congratulations. You have your edge rusher. Either way, we have 2 starters here, 2 that I'm very confident in, very, very good players. Myers, I think, can fill in, any of the interior spots. Will he fill in at right guard? I don't think so. But just having another guy available is great because, the Chargers had Trey Turner last year, but they also rotated, I think, through 6 different players at right guard. And that's just not fair for Herbert, for Feeney, for anybody around these guys. It's not even fair for the guys that are rotating in because they shouldn't have to, be the 3rd string lineman and then expect to come in mid-game. You should be ready, I guess, but it's tough. So I'm pretty happy with this trade so far, or with this draft so far. You have your tackle. I love Darisaw. You have Dickerson, who's a huge, mean mofo. I believe he had the most big-time blocks in the NFL for an interior lineman. I know there's an injury issue there, but at this point, I'm not really super concerned about it. But that is a potential red flag. But I'd much rather have him there, a true center, than someone like Feeney. I think this line growing together and gelling together would be wonderful. Roche, we talked about depth. The guy that's going to take over for Bulaga one day is Hudson. At least I hope he can. At least put something behind him. We just can't watch Pipkins trot out there again and get murdered. And then 2 wide receivers. Williams is going to be gone soon. I think Fitzpatrick could eventually fill that role. Or maybe that's Johnson. I don't know. But I certainly think they can, him or Powell can start to fill those roles when guys like Guyton, when guys like Williams, maybe Hill if he doesn't work out, put more bodies in that room. Make it the best, 4 or 5 deep, receiving core, and to go along with Joe Reed. So that's it for me. I hope this is my first time going all the way through and doing all these trades. Very, very interesting. The idea of trading back is wonderful because look what you can do. You can turn, 4 picks in 3 rounds into 7 picks, in the first 5 rounds. So I'm pretty excited for this. I actually think this is a route that they could go, especially because, if the guy they don't like is there at 13, there's a lot of teams in that 20 range that will trade back, just like the Bears did. Washington could do it. So I think this is pretty good. So what do you guys think? Let me know and take care.